We truly are Presbyterians. My name is Sean Chow. I'm the Associate Pastor of Family Life at St. Paul's Presbyterian Church in Laurel Springs, New Jersey. I'm a recent graduate of San Francisco Theological Seminary in 2009 from the Pasadena campus, and I'm excited about what some of the things that we are doing as a Presbyterian church. And what I'm thankful for is the diversity, that there are people of diverse cultures and backgrounds and everything else that come together to make up the Presbyterian church, that we're not necessarily an Anglo church anymore, but we are full of Koreans, we're full of Hispanics, we are full of many different cultures, and together we make the Presbyterian church, that we are not one demographic, but we are many demographics together. And along with that, I'm grateful for the heritage that we have, that is the foundation for our church, that our heritage is made up of confessions that have spanned a couple thousand years, that have been put together and well thought about, and it's not made up on the fly, that we have a depth in who we are, in what we believe in, that isn't something that has been made up in the last 50 years, but has a deep roots in Reformed theology. And I also really appreciate the connectional nature of this church, that the church down the street and us up here have a connection that is unlike any other. We might operate as two distinct churches, and we might have two distinct ways of doing our ministry, but we are connected. And if something was to be needed between them, we have a special bond, a connection through the Church of Jesus Christ that brings us together, that makes the church, that brings us to connects churches from the East Coast to the West Coast and from the Midwest, and we are there for each other, and we are one in a church family. There's incredible disappointments that I do have in the Presbyterian Church, that we as the Presbyterian Church do not treat each other nearly as well as we should of one another, that in different issues that have come up in the last 10, 15, 20 years have polarized us between a liberal base and a conservative base, and we don't see each other as a brother or sister in Christ, but a lot of times we see them as a person of an issue, and we don't love and embrace them nearly as much as we do, because in 95% of the cases we believe the same things from church to church to church, but in many times we don't act like we are a unified body. And what I'm also disappointed in is the missional aspect of the Presbyterian Church. Many times we talk about going into the community and doing different things and being a part of the community, and many times we just circle our wagons. We are okay with the status quo, and we talk about missional, but the majority of our churches don't do that. We do that in ways that is ministry 20 years ago or 15 years ago, but is not doing ministry in a context that is multicultural, multi-generational, multi-everything, to reach the community that we are about. And I'm disappointed that we aren't doing new things, that we are so oftentimes wrapped up in our own fights, in the different things that we are arguing about, we're more focused on what drives us apart than what drives us together, to come together, to pool funds for new church developments, to be there for Korean congregations, to be there for new Hispanic, or being alongside our brothers and sisters in a church down the street and helping them develop new ways of doing ministry when they're struggling with financial or the resources or whatever it might be, to be being right there with them. But in the next 5 years, I see exciting things happening within the Presbyterian Church. I see us concentrating on becoming multi-generational, multicultural, and reaching out to different people in our cultures and embracing them. In our own congregation, we have a bunch of people that have immigrated here from Cameroon, and while this might be an incredible Anglo church, but to embrace the cultures of Cameroon and some of the things that the Cameroon Presbyterian Church does. In a couple weeks ago, they brought their two children to church, the twins, to church, and we embraced them in a way that is done in the Cameroon church. When they first come to church, it is an important event that we celebrate and show off these twins. And we did that to embrace the culture, and this isn't something we've ever done before, but to embrace it as being something that we are a multicultural church, and we have to have aspects of different cultures within our church. But I also see us as a church needing to reach out into new ways, because as our churches begin to dwindle, we do not look at we go into a survival mode as opposed to a mode that is where God calls us to be out into the world, into Jerusalem, Samaria, into the ends of the world, as opposed to just our little context. And we need to look at the church as a bigger church, as opposed to our own little corner of the world. But then we also look at some of the ministries and organizations that I'm excited about. In the Santa Barbara Presbytery, where I come from, they're doing a program called Front Porch, which reaches out to college students and being there as they struggle with learning what they're learning in an academic setting along with their faith, and how does that interact, and the many questions that come up through that, and having Presbyterians, having elders, having church members of the surrounding churches come together to help these college students walk through their faith and begin to really understand what they believe and how they act it and how it interacts with their academics. And as they go through the 18 to 25-year-old, where we lose many of our students, but to be there and walk alongside of them, supporting them in ways that a lot of times we are not there for people. But I'm also excited for many of the new ways of we're doing church, whether it is starting new church developments or it is relooking at the congregations that we have and looking at what it is to be church, and what does it mean to be a church in the 21st century. No longer is it about a building, but it might be in a coffee shop, or it might be in a variety of different settings, or it doesn't even have to be on a Sunday morning again. But reimagining church while holding on to our Reformed faith and what we believe in, doing ministry and reaching out to community in ways that God calls us to be. That we are to be out there. We are to reach the people. And they aren't going to come into a white church, tall steepled building, but we have to go out there and reach and embrace them. Thank you very much.